everybody. So today I felt like having a look at Elon Musk's article on Wikipedia. And the reason I want to do this is because Elon Musk made a criticism of Wikipedia. And he said, Wikipedia are Wokepedia, they're Dickopedia, they get things wrong a lot. Now, he might be quite new to the idea of Wikipedia, but I'm not. And I just wanted to... I've known about Wikipedia since pretty much as soon as it started. So I just wanted to really look at his claims and whether they have any merit. And now he hasn't been very specific. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to look at what he could be meaning. And what he could be meaning is his article. A lot of people have said, oh, Elon Musk is only crying because he has a bad article about him. Okay, fair enough. But then we've got to say, okay, is he allowed to have a bad article about him? Because Wikipedia has a policy called Biographies of Living Persons, also known as BLP, and that says that they're not meant to have any negative articles about anyone. They're not meant to have any defamation articles, and in fact they're supposed to move so far away from it that everything has to be verified to the nth degree if it's about a living person, and they have to err on the side of caution. So they have to be a lot more careful about living people than they do about dead people and about things that are not about people, like for example about TV shows, for example. And so with that in mind, he might actually have a point in criticising them. But the other thing is, if I go and have a look through Wikipedia's article on Elon Musk, having never seen it before, no, I actually have seen it before, but if we assume that I've never seen it before, know nothing about him, and just apply all of Wikipedia's rules as I know them, it actually passes. Because if you look through every little bit, you'd say, okay, so it's got verified links for everything, every claim it makes. Good. Now, it is very negative about him, but they're verified, so that's okay. So it says that he's a far-right extremist and conspiracy theorist, but it's got references to back that up. So, okay. Now, I might say, okay, but I'm a little bit curious because I know that he only voted Republican for the first time in 2024, so how could he possibly be far-right extremist? Was he lying the whole rest of the time? And they haven't addressed that because, of course, quite publicly, he voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. In fact, met with Barack Obama, publicly endorsing him. And he also publicly voted for Hillary Clinton, the Democratic Party nominee in 2016. And even in 2020, when he said he was considering voting Republican, he said he would not vote for Trump. So he was a never-Trumper, and he didn't publicly say who he voted for in 2020. It wasn't Trump. Was it Joe Biden? We're not quite sure, but it wasn't Trump. It might have been some third party, it might have been that he didn't vote. Because you're not required to vote in the USA. You are here in Australia, but you're not in USA. So that's the thing that we don't know. But we do know in 2024, only a few months out from the election, he announced that he would be voting for Trump, and he gave Trump his official endorsement. And after Trump won, he actually made Elon Musk, or he nominated him for a cabinet position. Now, we don't know if that's going to be endorsed, but it probably will be, because Republicans hold the balance of power in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. So essentially, unless there's a very good reason not to, all of his nominations will go through, I think. Certainly the majority of them, and I don't see any major reason why not to allow Elon Musk in. So with all that in mind, is it fair and balanced to give Elon Musk such a negative article? And what I want to look at is when I was first aware of Elon Musk having an article on Wikipedia. Now, I haven't gone back and checked the actual first edit, and I haven't gone through edit by edit through the history. And I'm also not an Elon Musk expert. I don't know what his first company, the Boring Company, is, and I'm not sure how much money he had to start with. But I do know in the early days, the only major negative against him on his page was that his father had an emerald mine, and they believed he did, and that Elon Musk may have had some financial benefit from that, which helped him to start his career. That was the only negative, because Elon Musk was saying he was a self-made man. He started from nothing, and people saying, well, he might have started with $200 million or so, or at least your father had 200 million. You know, so that was the only thing. Now, Elon Musk did criticise that. He was not happy with that. But the rest of the article was pretty fair to him, pretty nice. So you'd say it wasn't too bad on it. It wasn't really very harsh. I mean, you'd say perhaps a bit of undue weight, since that wasn't proven that his father really had an emerald mine. And even if he did, how much it was worth. And even if it was worth a lot, whether Elon Musk got anything out of it. So arguably shouldn't have been in the article, given it wasn't really proven. And given that the amount of money Elon Musk ended up getting was so far above that it's a bit ridiculous to make those claims. I mean, there are other people like perhaps Donald Trump or Gina Rinehart who did get inheritances but ended up with much more money than the people who their parents who they got the money from. Far more powerful. You know, they're not just nepo babies, as people will call it. So the difference is, you see, so there's people like Paris Hilton who have a lot less money than their parents, and all the money they got, or most of the money they got, was from their parents. Although Paris Hilton in herself probably isn't the best example, because she did end up using that money to get a bit of fame and so forth, and did a bit of a career herself. But there are certainly people around who their sole source of income is their parents. So it's a bit of a criticism. In some ways it's unfair, because it's more like saying, well, he didn't start from nothing. No, he might have started, even if he started with 200 million. If he currently has 400 billion, that's a 2,000 times increase. And you don't just get that by just sitting on your backside doing nothing. So, but that was the criticism. Now, if I was looking at that Wikipedia article at the time, I'd say, it's not that bad. It wasn't perfect. And you might say, well, if you do want to mention that, you need to put it in a proper context. And they weren't really putting it in a proper context, but it wasn't that bad. And they argued that, well, they had to have something about him that was negative, because everything else was extremely positive. Now, of course, they did mention the Boring Company. They mentioned PayPal, which he founded, or helped to found something. And so more recently, they've changed it from him founding to him simply helping to pay for it. Okay. And then there's the Tesla company, which he founded. Well, wait on. Now it's saying that he may just have helped to fund it. Okay. So there's all these things which are sort of taking a lot of the credit away from him. So I'm not aware that he definitely had nothing to do with PayPal, and definitely didn't have anything to do with Tesla. I mean, these are what he's famous for, particularly Tesla, and then SpaceX. And, you know, so there was all those things, but it seemed generally okay. Like, it wasn't great, it was a bit unfair on him, and I'd say that it was probably unfairly harsh on him. You know, biographies of living person violations galore, giving undue weight. But then, in 2020, when he announced his change of election preference, so that he was considering going for Republicans, even though it doesn't seem like he actually did, they ended up having an article or a whole section about a single tweet that he made, which was criticising COVID-19. Now the thing is, this didn't really get media attention. But it was a tweet he made, and you say, oh, it's a tweet. Now tweets aren't really all that exciting. They say, well, they're not a news source, you're not allowed to use them in Wikipedia, just an individual tweet. So why did they have a section in it? They shouldn't have. And also, they missed the context of it. Because if you saw the actual context, there was a lot of other context around it. And he wasn't really saying that anything conspiratorial about it at all. So, you know, there were like 50 tweets and they only put one, they took it out of context and they made a mountain out of a molehill. And that's quite unfair and against Wikipedia policy. But they did it anyway. And then, of course, you had some other things. So you would think, if you're aware of why he took over Twitter, you could say, okay, he took over Twitter, at least partially because Twitter they did suspend him, I believe, for a week. And they're thinking of banning him. So he took it over so they couldn't ban him. And they didn't like some of the things he said. And it was a bit unfair, it was a bit corrupt. So his ban was a bit corrupt. I think most people knew that it was quite corrupt to ban him or to threaten to ban him, particularly for the reasons they did. But so he bought it, and after he bought it, it was probably quite reasonable to say, well, he only bought it to stop being banned. But he's paying $44 billion to stop being banned. That's a fair bit. It's actually more than what it was worth. But then, one of the best things he did was to expose some of the bad behaviour of the previous owners of Twitter. So, it's not Jack Dorsey who founded it, but it's the people that were in control of it when Elon Musk took over. And he actually seemed surprised, because a lot of it was unfair to Donald Trump. Now remember that Elon Musk was against Donald Trump when he took it over. So in 2022, Elon Musk was very much against Donald Trump, hated the guy. And yet, after he took it over, he exposed it, he found out that actually Donald Trump was given a bad go. It was unfair on him. There was this whole setup. And the whole January 6th thing, the whole storming of the US Capitol building, wasn't as much Donald Trump's fault as what they'd said. Because they deleted certain tweets that proved Trump's innocence. And they only left the ones that made him look bad, but were out of context, because they missed certain other tweets. So without having the full context, it's complete baloney. And I suspect that people knew this. Like, okay, not the everyday person, because the tweets were probably only up for 5 seconds, but the people in Congress who called for his impeachment over it. So that impeachment was bogus. It had no justification at all, no merit. And also, of course, the charges against him. Now that's separate to the charges against the people who did storm the Capitol. I think that's a separate issue. Although there's some people that are claiming that that was legitimate too, at least in some cases. So, but certainly the ones against Trump were missing a lot of vital evidence. And Musk was, like, he didn't put that article out there, or those articles out there, to try to exonerate Trump, but that's just the way that things worked. So you should have had this in his Wikipedia article. It's not there. There's no mention of it. There's no mention of it exposing all that. It's as if it hadn't happened. It's as if all the corrupt things that Twitter had done under the previous leadership hadn't happened. And they were admitted to, not just by the Twitter leadership, who actually didn't admit it, but Facebook's leadership. So Mark Zuckerberg went on the Joe Rogan podcast and said, yeah, we did the same things. But it still wasn't mentioned. It still wasn't mentioned that certain people within the US government were deliberately causing certain lies to be told about Donald Trump after he left office or after he failed to win the election. And there was also lies about Hunter Biden. And you know, all these things, they're not mentioned about Elon Musk, they're not mentioned about anything. Wikipedia have just hidden them. So you'd think if they're being responsible, they're being balanced, they'd mention that, but they don't even mention it. It doesn't get a mention. So because of that, one of the best things that Elon Musk did, which was to expose all that, isn't mentioned. So he has this big positive that's not mentioned. And he has this little negative about a little tweet that he made that wasn't picked up by any articles and was out of context, that they've made into a big deal. And then they've got a far-right conspiracy theorist nut job. And it's not substantiated. It's not based on reality. It's based on tiny little things taken out of context. That's okay if you want to mention that, and then you have the context. But they don't. And this is the problem with Wikipedia, because Wikipedia claims to be unbiased. And of course, nobody's unbiased. So if Wikipedia said, oh, look, we're completely biased against anybody who's Republican, they'd be okay, you could just account for it. And I think a lot of people realise that, but they don't say it. So, for example, when I was first following Wikipedia, there was a big article on George W. Bush Jr., the second one, the son. And he was president at the time that Wikipedia started. So it's not really a big surprise that that was the most edited article. It was also the most inaccurate article, according to multiple experts. Like, every expert said it was extremely inaccurate. And the funny thing with that one was that they actually analysed the edits, and about 70% of the edits, so almost 3/4, were positive towards George W. Bush, but yet the article as a whole was almost entirely negative. So the minority got to control the article. Now, how could they possibly do that if everybody gets to edit freely? Well, they don't, because that's a lie. Wikipedia is not a consensus. It is actually controlled by a small number of people. And each individual article, they have, depending on the article, depending on its importance, might have one person, might have two or three, might have 5 or 6 people who control it and make sure it's in a certain version. So if you edit it, you're only allowed to edit it in a way that keeps it in the same general way. So let's say, for example, you're an expert on George W. Bush, which I certainly am not, but other people are. And if you edited that article, certainly at least while he was president, and you corrected it, you'd probably find yourself banned. Now, you might not be banned straight away. They might say, oh, haha, funny joke. And then they'd warn you. And then they'd say, do it again and you're in trouble. And then they might have a big thing about, oh, why are you doing this? But then eventually they'll ban you. And then once you've been banned, anybody else who does it, even if it's not you, if it's no relation to you, if they do it in a similar way, they'll get banned straight away. And they control it. And they've done that about every major article. Now, then they say, oh, okay, that's just because we're criticising presidents, that's okay. But they didn't do this to Barack Obama. Barack Obama article, yeah, the majority of people were editing it in a positive way, but the article was positive. So why? You've got 2 people, 2 articles, both presidents, both having articles edited in a positive way, one being positive, one being negative. Why is that? And Elon Musk is actually a really good example, because when he was voting Democrat, his article was very positive. Okay, it had the tiny little thing about the Emerald Mine, but it was very positive besides that. Now it's extremely negative. It's so negative that it's absurd. He's not the president, but he's going to be on the cabinet. He's on the Republican side. If he'd entered politics on the Democrat side, I'm sure his article would not have been so negative. And you can see people like Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. suddenly has a very negative article. Donald Trump, before he ran for politics, had well, perhaps not the most positive article in the world, but a generally positive article. Now it's extremely negative. These are good examples of people who changed their political stance and their article changed with them. And this is proof that Wikipedia is not accurate. Because if they were accurate, if they were unbiased, they wouldn't care about people changing their political position. They would keep it accurate. But they don't. So you're left with a situation that, was Elon Musk's article accurate in the first place, or did they keep it inaccurate just because he was Democrat? Russell Brand is another example. He was Democrat, and as soon as he started going the other side, and of course he wasn't Democrat because he's not American, but he was left, as soon as he started going the other side, all the negative stuff came out. And sure, you might say, okay, that's real, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah. And even Joe Rogan, they forget to mention, he was a full Democrat. But as soon as he started going Republican, they said far-right conspiracy theorist. He didn't ever become a far-right conspiracy theorist. He was just a Republican. And they just decided to badmouth him. And that's Wikipedia. There's a lot of other people, not just Wikipedia, but Wikipedia is one of the culprits. Anyway, that's it from me. Bye-bye now.